Alright, let's try something different today. Let's talk about the hottest new action-packed sci-fi horror flick. Picture this. A place on the border of two nations. A mysterious canyon shrouded in fog, day in and day out. For reasons unknown, a top-secret task force, along with an elite Marine sniper, has been assigned to guard it. Nobody knows how deep this canyon goes, and even fewer know its terrifying secrets. However, the bizarre sounds that occasionally emanate from its depths have made the guards of both nations realize humanity may be facing an unprecedented catastrophe. What kind of world lies hidden behind that fog? Can they succeed in preventing disaster from striking? The story begins a few days earlier. Drace is Lithuania's top special agent. After completing an assassination mission, she's once again assigned by her organization to a desolate valley. She'll be stationed in this towering watchtower for the next few days, carrying out secret guard duty. The item she needs to guard is the very entrance to this valley. Drace was confused when she heard. From any point of view, this place doesn't look like anyone would come here. Meanwhile, on the other side, Navy Marine scout sniper Levi, who had been discharged, was urgently recalled after 4 years of retirement. At this moment, a female officer had been waiting a long time after the other side inquired about the basic situation of Levi and sent a specialized aircraft to take him to a deserted area. After making a halo jump, Levi landed in a dense, forested valley. He then made his way through the mountains and forests. After overcoming countless difficulties, he finally arrived at his mission area. Turns out it was the same mysterious valley, constantly shrouded in fog in a canyon where you rarely see a soul. Soon after, he successfully met up with the valley's outgoing guard. JD, this guy, enthusiastically showed him around, though it seemed even JD didn't know much about the place. Then, he led Levi to the base of a watchtower and told him this was the guard's living quarters. Inside, it had all the essentials except for any communication devices. During their guard duty, they couldn't contact the outside world. Just then, Levi spotted another watchtower standing tall on the other side of the canyon. JD quickly cleared up his confusion. It meant there was another guard in that tower, but regulations stated the two weren't allowed to make contact. However, considering the entire valley from north to south was littered with mines and deadly strategic obstacles, this rule was pretty much useless since there was no way they could reach the other side. Even though JD spoke casually, seeing all the heavy weaponry set up in the valley made Levi uneasy. He couldn't help but ask what exactly was in the valley. Unexpectedly, JD told him the valley was the gateway to hell, and they were the guardians of that gate. Levi could barely believe it, but JD's face was dead serious as he went on to explain that their mission wasn't what Levi assumed, guarding the canyon to keep people out. It was to make sure the monsters in the valley couldn't escape. Levi thought he was talking nonsense, but at that moment, a bizarre shriek echoed through the valley. JD said this was a monster he just talked about, but nobody knew what that looked like. The older guards long ago used to call it the Hollow Man, and that name stuck ever since. Back in the 1840s, the International Alliance sent 2,400 cavalrymen to try and wipe out those strange monsters. However, nobody made it out of the valley alive. Since then, the International Alliance has switched from offense to defense, setting up a dense network in this valley to stop the Hollow Men from getting out. Levi felt even more uneasy after hearing that. That night, he thought about everything JD had said. Then he wrote down his feelings in his notebook, and he placed his rifle within easy reach. Only then did he reluctantly fall asleep. The next morning, JD boarded a helicopter to leave the valley. But unexpectedly, the receiving personnel, after confirming his identity, immediately shot him dead without a word. Turns out this was a transfer process mandated by the International Alliance. Meanwhile, on the other side, Levi officially began his days of guarding alone. Every day, he diligently patrolled the western side of the valley, regularly sending situation reports over the radio. But besides that, his life became incredibly dull. He could only flip through the documents left behind by his predecessors. Unexpectedly, he discovered some other messages on the wall behind the bookshelf. Levi curiously read a few sentences, discovering they were all inspiring mental therapies. This made him feel like his lonely soul was being comforted, but the days of guard duty continued to pass monotonously. That night, Levi couldn't resist picking up his binoculars to observe the opposite side. He discovered that the guard in the eastern tower was a woman, and Drace also keenly realized that someone seemed to be watching her. So, she quietly extinguished her candle, but it was hard to extinguish the fire burning in Levi's heart. After that day, the relationship between the two of them underwent subtle changes. Every day, they observed each other through binoculars. Finally, one day, Drace couldn't restrain herself anymore. She fired a shot into the sky. The gunshot attracted Levi's attention. When he observed the opposite side through his binoculars again, he discovered Drace was holding up a handwritten sign. She was proactively communicating with him. But unexpectedly, Levi suddenly became hesitant, reverting to the regulation that they weren't allowed to talk. Drace, however, didn't care about that. She immediately used her sniper rifle to shoot and shatter a cup in Levi's room. This bullet ignited the night. Levi wasn't about to lose, and he returned fire. Just then, Drace suddenly signaled to him, with a serious look on her face, pointing down toward the bottom of the canyon. Seeing this, Levi immediately focused his attention and began scanning. At first, due to the low light, he didn't notice anything unusual, but Drace, looking through her binoculars, detected a slight movement, a shadowy figure slowly moving. At that moment, Levi realized something wasn't right. He quickly raised his rifle. This time, he could see something in the canyon. There was an unidentified object climbing the cliff face, moving strangely and quickly, making it all the more unsettling. These creatures had human faces. Levi didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. He accurately hit the target, successfully detonating the bomb that had been buried underneath. However, more of the unidentified creatures continued to appear in the canyon. Seeing this, Drace quickly set up her machine gun, and together, she and Levi cleaned up these strange creatures. Under the intense barrage of firepower, the monsters in the canyon were temporarily driven back. A deadly silence fell around them, as if the fierce battle had just been an illusion. Levi recalled the words JD had said. He realized these bizarre monsters were probably the legendary Hollow Men. Just then, Drace quickly detected small noises coming from below her feet. A feeling of unease surged through her. Her heart rate increased, and she cautiously looked down. Unexpectedly, a Hollow Man had silently climbed up the watchtower, and she didn't even notice when. Drace's breathing immediately became rapid. She quickly drew her weapon and fired, pushing it back. However, the danger wasn't over. There were still many Hollow Men climbing up below the watchtower. Drace didn't dare hesitate and kept firing. At the same time, Levi was providing fire support from afar. Unexpectedly, the Hollow Man that fell landed on explosives as it tumbled down. An explosion erupted, and Drace was struck in the shoulder by shrapnel. Seeing this, Levi quickly loaded his heavy machine gun and sprayed a torrent of bullets toward the Hollow Men on the other side of the canyon. On the other side, Drace quickly got to her feet, enduring the pain in her shoulder and continuing to return fire. Countless bullets crisscrossed the canyon, forming a deadly network of firepower, taking down each monster that tried to climb. Just then, a Hollow Man touched the boundary line. Immediately, the surrounding Gatling guns all activated, and the firepower was instantly ramped up to the maximum. Bullets flew like rain, piercing through the canyon. It's unknown how much time has passed. The flames and gunpowder smoke in the canyon gradually dissipated. Levi finally saw Drace on the other side, and she also met his gaze. Then, she held up the whiteboard they used to communicate, writing that this was the most amazing birthday of her life. Seeing this, Levi finally cracked a happy smile. This intense battle had temporarily come to an end. Time passed, and the next morning, Levi got to work on the intense repair work. He didn't want to experience those strange creatures swarming everywhere a second time. But just as he was redeploying explosives on the cliff face, a strangely shaped flying device slowly ascended from deep within the canyon. Drace, up on high, immediately went on high alert. Soon after, the Gatling gun next to her locked onto the target, but in the very next second, it suddenly lowered its barrel, and the suspicious flying device quickly flew away just as Levi turned around. What in the world was going on? Time just flew by, and it's already December. The weather had turned frigid. During this time, Levi also patrolled the mountains on schedule and reported information. However, Thanks to Drace's presence, his guard duty wasn't as tough as it used to be. The two of them continued to maintain long-distance communication every day, using gestures and signs to convey their thoughts and feelings to each other. On snowy days, they even excitedly built a snowman on their respective sides, as if they were accompanying each other. However, one day in February, Drace's mood was very sluggish. She sadly held up a sign telling Levi about the sadness in her heart. After reading the words on the sign, Levi couldn't calm down for a long time. So, the next day he went to the warehouse to get a rocket. Soon after, he pushed a bundle of rope outside. Drace was observing Levi's actions from the observation tower until she saw him setting up the rocket with the rope. That's when she understood his intentions. A hint of surprise and anticipation flashed in her eyes. Levi steadily squeezed the trigger, and the rocket, with a piercing screech, flew across the vast canyon, accurately reaching the other side. Drace immediately understood. She quickly ran down the observation tower, using one hand to put out the burning branches with a fire extinguisher and securely tying the rope to a large tree with the other. When she returned to the observation tower again, she saw Levi holding a wooden board on which he wrote, "Can we have dinner together tonight?" Drace's heart started beating faster. She took a deep breath and didn't refuse. So, after completing his daily tasks, Levi carefully cleaned himself up. Then he picked some flowers he had grown. He slid quickly toward the other side along the rope, but the canyon was just too wide, causing him to stop halfway due to lack of strength. Below him was a foggy valley. Levi felt a jolt in his heart. He gripped the rope tightly with both hands and climbed forward, finally making it safely to the other side. The two people who held feelings for each other finally met. Drace's joy was evident on her face. She proactively invited Levi to have dinner. Then, the two sat on the observation deck, drinking and chatting, enjoying these rare moments together. After night fell, Levi didn't leave Drace's observation tower. The two could finally dance together in this romantic atmosphere. What was about to happen naturally was perfectly reasonable. After expressing their feelings, the two lay on the sofa, gazing at the starry sky. Looking at the twinkling Orion constellation, a deep longing shone in Drace's eyes. She remembered her father once saying he would say goodbye to the world on Valentine's Day. If Drace missed him very much, she should look at the Orion constellation in the sky, and he would turn into the brightest star, forever by her side. The next day, the two said goodbye with reluctance. Levi took a step, looked back at the rope, and quickly slid to the other side. But fate always likes to play tricks. Just as he reached the middle of the canyon, a commotion suddenly erupted in the valley below. It turned out to be those hateful hollow men who, for some reason, had triggered the bombs on the cliff face. Before Levi could react, the rope snapped in the shock of the explosion. His body, like a kite with its string cut, fell straight into the abyss. This scene was seen by Drace. Without thinking, she quickly rushed to the room and gathered the equipment she could use. Then, without hesitation, she jumped into the abyss. The wind whistled past her ears. She calculated the timing and deployed her parachute. Moments later, Drace crashed into a raging river. The freezing river water immediately submerged her. In a panic, she struggled with all her might. Then, grabbing onto a tree branch, she barely managed to pull herself onto the shore. Meanwhile, on the other side, Levi was unconscious, hanging upside down in a tree. In a daze, he felt something slowly approaching. But when he struggled to open his eyes, a monster that looked like a caterpillar, but of incredibly massive size, was slowly crawling toward him. Levi's heart pounded with fear. Without thinking, he quickly grabbed his weapon and aimed it at the insect, unleashing a fierce barrage. After a few shots, he finally managed to shoot it down. Then he cut the ropes and fell to the ground, accidentally breaking some kind of strange object. Levi didn't pay much attention and tried to stand up, but he was horrified to discover that the ground beneath his feet was like sticky glue. It was holding him firmly to the ground. No matter how much he struggled, he couldn't escape its grasp. Even more terrifying, sharp, white streaks suddenly appeared all around him and slowly closed in. Just as Levi was about to lose his life there, a series of familiar gunshots suddenly rang out. It turned out that Drace had arrived just in time. She quickly moved forward, using her knife to help Levi cut through the slime beneath him. Soon after, the two decided to venture through this mysterious fog to the eastern cliff face to find the escape rope. However, at this moment, the fog was like a thick curtain, concealing everything around them. They didn't know what dangers lay hidden inside. They could only carefully continue onward. But after taking just a few steps, the atmosphere suddenly became strange. The two cautiously gripped their weapons, their eyes scanning back and forth in the fog. At that moment, a figure riding a horse charged out of the mist. Dresa couldn't avoid it and was violently knocked to the ground by the fast-moving monster. Levi didn't escape either, being thrown aside by another horse. The scene before his eyes made him gasp. The riders had bizarre forms, their bodies covered in branches. Levi instinctively guessed these were the hollow men in the canyon. So, the two resolved to fight back. But unexpectedly, the monsters, with the help of their hollow horse, moved with incredible speed, and their attack capabilities were not to be underestimated. Luckily, the two were no slouches in combat either. Dresa quickly adjusted her posture, relying on her agility skills. She turned defeat into victory, sending the hollow man that attacked her flying with a single shot. Levi also sees an opening in the monster's attack, decisively firing and taking down the strange hollow horse. The hollow man, having lost its warhorse, seemed a bit panicked. Levi seized the opportunity, rushing forward and slamming the butt of his gun into the opponent's head, sending it to heaven. Unfortunately, the hollow man grabbed his knife and took the opportunity to escape, disappearing into the thick fog. Seeing the gaunt body of the hollow man, he bent down to examine it carefully. As a result, he discovered that these hollow men were wearing uniforms from the 1840s. This reminded him of what JD had said. The 2,400 cavalrymen from that year, after entering the canyon, disappeared without a trace. They should have turned to dust long ago, but why could their uniforms still be found here? What secret was hidden behind this? The two, unable to figure it out, continued on their way. But the scene before them was even more horrifying. The mountains and hills were covered in trees deformed from white bones. Their faces were ferocious and terrifying, as if silently recounting unimaginable pain, making people feel a chill from the depths of their hearts. They walked a little further, and Levi and Dresa arrived at a construction area. The ground here was full of cracks, as if it had experienced a violent earthquake. The buildings were covered in strange vines, like venomous snakes crawling up the walls. Around them, occasional terrifying screams echoed. The two immediately went on high alert, raising their weapons. Then, they rushed to take refuge in an abandoned church. But no one expected the scene inside the church to be even more horrifying than outside. Every pew was filled with human skeletons. Levi stepped forward and carefully observed. He discovered that these people had all died from cyanide poisoning. This couldn't help but plunge him into contemplation. What exactly was so terrifying that it made them make such a choice? Could this place be hell? Dresa didn't know how to comfort him. She could only walk around the church to investigate. Just as she looked up at the roof of the church, a spider-like monster suddenly attacked from above. It swung its claws and pounced, knocking her to the ground. Soon after, countless human bone spiders swarmed into the church, attacking Dresa and Levi crazily. Both were seasoned warriors. Faced with these monsters, they didn't show any fear. However, at this moment, a large number of hollow men unexpectedly appeared in the church, catching them off guard. At this point, Dresa decisively took explosives out of her backpack. With a deafening explosion, the two ran out of the church without looking back. They finally escaped without suffering any harm. But now, the screams around them were growing increasingly intense. Their only option was to hide in the tunnel inside the canyon, using the objects inside to block the entrance. Then, they continued to stealthily explore deeper inside. However, when they went down the stairs to the basement, the scene before them stunned them. The room was full of strange vines, bizarre human remains scattered, everywhere uneven. Broken bones littered around, and even splatters of dazzling fresh blood. The two tried to suppress the discomfort in their hearts and carefully searched through the rubble. Just then, Dresa found an old videotape. Her intuition told her it might hold the key to unlocking the secret. Levi quickly reacted, rummaging through every corner filled with messy belongings. He finally found a generator that was still working. They quickly connected the electrical wires. With the roar of the engine, The video player flickered to life. Unstable black and white images appeared, and a truth that had been buried for a long time gradually emerged. It turned out that at the end of World War II, the International Alliance was not only working hard to research nuclear weapons, but also developing devastating biological weapons. And this rarely visited canyon was the Alliance's top-secret base at that time. Unfortunately, a powerful 8.1 magnitude earthquake struck unexpectedly, destroying everything in this place. The base's facilities were severely damaged in the violent earthquake. The biological weapons stored inside were completely leaked. The genes of the creatures in the canyon began to combine crazily. Although people with strong immune systems temporarily escaped the disaster, once infected, terrifying mutation symptoms would appear within 5 days. To prevent the poisonous gas from continuing to spread, in the end, they chose to stay in the canyon to live and die on their own. After learning the truth, Drace and Levi felt extremely moved and conflicted. However, the current urgent task was to quickly find a way to escape. Soon, in another room, they found a computer device that was still usable. Judging from its style, it was probably a product from the late 2000s. It seemed that another group of people had been here before. As the computer screen lit up, even deeper mysteries appeared before their eyes. It turned out that after the earthquake, a paramilitary organization called Dark Lake had taken over this place. Not only did they not choose to destroy the canyon, they continued to develop biological weapons, and they also used drones to collect samples of mutated creatures, FM-1411, plotting to create an army of super soldiers. The two immediately understood. It turned out that this was the real secret they needed to protect. Soon after, Levi opened a file named Wild Dog. Unexpectedly, this was the canyon's self-destruct program. As soon as this area was lost, the program would automatically activate and detonate all the radiation in the canyon. The area of thermal radiation was projected to be 4.2 kilometers or more. The two didn't hesitate and decided to immediately return to the exit to escape. Before leaving, they once again expressed their feelings for each other and promised that they would escape together. But unexpectedly, when they arrived at the door, they discovered that the backpack they had left earlier had disappeared. Levi's face immediately turned serious. He quickly realized that these hollow men seemed to have intelligence. So, he slowly opened the door, only to see the backpack lying silently in a distant clearing, with no sign of any enemies around. Knowing that this was very likely a trap, Drace quickly threw out 2 smoke bombs. Then, the two used a thick smoke screen as cover. They cautiously approached the bag, weapons at the ready. However, as soon as Drace grabbed the bag, a rope suddenly flew out from the shadows, tightly wrapping around her calf and pulling her quickly into the depths of the fog. Seeing this, Levi immediately ran after her without hesitation. Along the way, Drace struggled to break free. She tried to use her knife to cut the rope, but the opponent was moving incredibly fast. Her body was being dragged along the ground. She was completely exhausted. The hollow man was riding a horse, pulling her with one hand and looking back, seemingly guarding against something. With no other option, Drace could only use her gun to shoot, but because of the violent shaking, it was very difficult to aim. Finally, she slammed into a protruding tree root and passed out. On the other side, Levi followed the tracks and ran like the wind, finally reaching the location of the biological weapons pit. The air here was filled with a pungent odor, like poisonous gas from hell. But thinking of Drace's uncertain fate, Levi didn't hesitate and plunged in. At this time, Drace was suspended in midair, frantically struggling to break free. Seeing this, the hollow man malevolently approached, seemingly wanting to intimidate this unruly woman. A sharp glint flashed in Drace's eyes. Gathering all her strength, she kicked the opponent hard. Drace seized the opportunity to break free and jump to the ground. But at this moment, the hollow man had been completely enraged. It drew a military knife from its belt and frantically slashed at Drace. Drace wasn't about to lose and quickly counterattacked. In this moment of crisis, she was even more resourceful. She grabbed the torch nearby and threw it hard at the hollow man. At the same time, Levi, following the sound, ran in, and a few shots successfully sent this ugly monster to its death. After confirming that Drace was unharmed, he carefully examined the hollow men's clothing. But when he saw the identification marking on the clothes, Levi's heart suddenly skipped a beat. This was the very first guard, Shaw, who also gave the Hollow Men their name. The increasing number of bizarre events made Levi uneasy. He wanted to return to the watchtower more than ever. However, at this moment, they were in a missile launch bunker, pitch black all around. Only a faint glimmer of light filtered through the mouth of the pit above, and the dim light trickled in. But unexpectedly, moments later, a horrifying scene appeared before them. Due to the earthquake, the leaked biological weapons caused all the surrounding creatures to mutate. Just then, they seemed to be connected by a mysterious force, their bodies emitting a strange light. Although their forms had been distorted, you could still make out the outlines of humans. The two held their breaths, concentrating intensely as they crossed this area, taking each step with extreme caution. As they were about to reach the door to the stairs, Draca suddenly stepped on something. Before she could react, those mutated creatures had been awakened. Luckily, Levi reacted quickly, drawing Shaw's military knife to cut through the vines. However, the danger was far from over. The vine-like tendrils were nearly indestructible, wave after wave, closing in on them. Seeing the two were about to fall into a desperate situation, Draca immediately detonated a bomb. Then, they barely managed to crawl back to the surface. Not far away, they spotted a warehouse. Remembering that this place was once a military base, they stepped into the warehouse with a glimmer of hope. Sure enough, here they found a military vehicle from World War II. Even more surprisingly, this vehicle was equipped with rubber tires for climbing, capable of scaling the canyon using steel cables. The two suddenly saw a glimmer of hope. When Levi finished repairing the car, they immediately headed toward the cliff face. The opportunity to escape was right before their eyes. Draca and Levi didn't want to give up easily. Supporting each other, they quickly eliminated all the Hollow Men that were pursuing them. Soon after, Draca started the car. The car began to climb along the steel cables. However, just as the two breathed a sigh of relief, in the next second, they spotted even more Hollow Men from the bottom of the canyon. They were climbing frantically. In just a blink of an eye, they were within striking distance. Levi again drew his military sword, mercilessly stabbing at the Hollow Men below his feet. Draca, next to him, also quickly joined the fight. Just then, a Hollow Man suddenly attacked from the side. Levi couldn't dodge in time and was knocked off balance, stumbling. Luckily, he managed to grab onto the railing of the car, which allowed him to regain his footing. However, in that fleeting moment, Levi came up with a way to escape this dangerous situation. He quickly punctured the gas tank of the car. Then, he quickly climbed back into the car, lit a flare, and threw it down below. With the military vehicle ready to plunge, the two immediately grabbed their tools and cut the cable. The car lost its support and quickly plummeted. In the explosion, they finally escaped the terrifying monsters, successfully escaping this abyss of hell. After returning to the surface, Draca and Levi looked at the valley, scarred with destruction. Their hearts were filled with mixed emotions. They understood that this place held too many secrets and dangers. To prevent further disasters, they made a bold decision to destroy this dangerous canyon. Afterward, the two walked away and disappeared. So, they returned to their guard stations. Levi made a situation report to his superiors as usual. However, this time, the response wasn't the usual cold, mechanical feedback. His superiors unexpectedly took the initiative to speak with Levi, asking him if he had ever ventured deep into the canyon. Levi's heart was shaken, but he quickly regained his composure. With an unchanged expression, he replied that he had not. At this time, his superior's tone became even colder, stating that the computer system beneath the canyon had been activated. If Levi hadn't activated himself, then it must have been the person in the watchtower on the opposite side. Therefore, his superiors ordered him to execute the guard on the opposite side. To avoid suspicion, Levi didn't hesitate and accepted the order. But secretly in his heart, he was plotting how to deal with this crisis. Little did they know that his superiors, through the computer camera, saw everything the two of them did. This conversation only further confirmed Levi's betrayal. His superiors immediately decided to come to the valley themselves, personally dealing with these two traitors. Early the next morning, Levi and Draca immediately took action, working nonstop, just as they couldn't suppress their feelings and were pouring their hearts out to each other. the sound of a helicopter suddenly echoed through the valley. Levi's expression slightly changed. He looked up and saw the Dark Lake symbol on the aircraft's body. He immediately realized danger was coming. Then he yelled, telling Dresa to run quickly. On the other side, when his superiors led people to the watchtower, they discovered Levi had long since disappeared. She immediately flew into a rage, dispatching modern, well-equipped quadcopter drones to search for the two fugitives in the valley. These drones were highly maneuverable, all equipped with mini Gatling guns. They quickly found Levi fleeing in the jungle. Fortunately, Levi's shooting skills were excellent. He accurately shot down one pursuing drone. Dresa wasn't about to be outdone. After nimbly dodging a series of attacking bullets, her finger gently pressed the trigger, shooting down both of the pursuing drones. Soon after, the two quickly ran to the top of the mountain. Each found an ideal position to set up their sniper rifles, aiming at the satellite broadcasting equipment on the cliff face. They had already set up wires there in advance. As soon as one broadcasting device exploded, it would trigger an irreversible chain reaction. With a deafening explosion, all the satellite broadcasting equipment in the canyon was destroyed. Immediately after, the watchtower echoed with a piercing alarm siren. The canyon was fully exposed on the satellite maps, and the self-destruct program was instantly activated. Seeing this, Dresa and Levi hurriedly ran toward the safe zone. The leadership group also panicked and boarded the helicopter, but at this point, it was too late. The helicopter was also affected by the intense shockwaves and immediately lost control, eventually crashing into the cliff face and exploding violently. Meanwhile, Dresa managed to escape the blast radius in time. Levi, due to his injured leg, was ultimately affected by the explosion and plunged into the water. Dresa waited for a long time in the mountains, but Levi never appeared. So, she went to the western island, as agreed, hoping that one day, she would be reunited with her lover. 2 months later, as she was carrying a tray of food to a table, she unexpectedly discovered that the person sitting across from her was Levi, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. From there, the movie ends. This movie, released on Valentine's Day 2025, is the latest work with a script written by the writing team of Doctor Strange and Frozen: The Tomorrow War. With an A-list cast including Anya Taylor-Joy and Levi Kane, it's a hot title even before its release. The film combines elements of science fiction, horror, action, and love, attempting to use a thrilling setting to launch an extreme story about humanity and emotion. The film kicks off with a spy mission set against the backdrop of the Cold War. The main character is a CIA agent, played by Dresa, partnered with a Russian sniper, played by Levi. Both are sent to a desolate canyon to carry out a mysterious mission. But in that isolated environment, they gradually bridge the gap, and eventually, they team up to fight supernatural monsters and a shadowy organization. The director tries to amplify the tension in the characters' relationship through the enclosed space of the canyon, like when the two interact via sniper rifles from afar or the life-or-death rescue scenes after the cable snaps. It combines a horror atmosphere with romantic elements, creating a unique dramatic conflict. Overall, this film is a masterpiece. If you're interested, you can check out the original film, The Gorge. If you like this video, don't hesitate to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. See you in the next video.